Chandler looked at himself in the mirror of his Spartan flat and took a deep breath. He examined the false boobs he wore under his hoodie, worrying that they might be lopsided, even though he knew real boobs often were. His wig was braided in 2 long red queues down both sides of his neck. He let his breath out in a long, loud sigh, staring deep into the reflection of his own eyes. "You don't have to do this," he told himself. "Yeah, I do," his reflection said back quietly. "It's stupid. This is, hands down, the stupidest thing you've ever done, and you don't have to do it." "Yes, I do." And for a moment he thought of Richard and how it must feel to argue with a stubborn friend who's made up his mind. Then he picked up the blue gingham dog and held it to his nose, smelling deeply, feeling himself reeling with the dizzying fragrance, and conjuring up all the courage that infatuation can persuade a man to feel. With his eyes closed, he saw her in all her glory and burned the image into his brain. "I don't have to," he agreed, "but I'm going to anyway." He took another deep breath to steady himself and opened his eyes, and his reflection called him a dumbass. Chandler walked into a pub with his braided wig on, wearing girly jeans and his red Arsenal hoodie and pink Converse, his hands in his pockets. His elbows stuck out and his shoulders were hunched a little bit, like a few shy girls he had seen when he was people-watching. He bent his head forward and wore a very meek expression, and he looked about uncertainly, feeling all eyes upon him. He looked about the room as if trying to choose a seat and not finding any of the empty ones suitable enough, and eventually made his way to the bar to climb up onto a stool there and sit, hunching his back even more. "What'll you have?" the burly man in an apron asked. He shrugged. "Beer?" The bartender cut his eyes at one of the men seated nearby, and something unspoken passed between them. That man sat back and looked at Chandler the redhead in the mirror behind the bar, bisected and multiplied behind shelves of booze. Chandler fought to resist the urge to meet that gaze and made himself scratch absently at the curly cues of dark wood grain on the bar's surface, just to be doing something. "A pint, then?" the bartender prompted. He nodded. "Whatever's fine." The other man watching him made up his mind and said, "This one's on me, Clive." "Bottle of our blessed champagne, then?" "Bollocks." Clive pulled a pint of stout, and the other man followed it over to Chandler, sliding one hand on the bar as he went. "The seat taken?" he asked. Chandler shook his head. "I'm Mark," he said, and then Chandler couldn't help but look up. He read Mark's face, looking for anything, wondering, is this him? Is this the Mark? Did you used to shag my girl? Mark wasn't handsome, not like Chandler was handsome, or even Rabbit, but he could see where Julang might think that he was. Before handing her a spiked drink and taking away her passport anyway. Before slapping her. "Hi, Mark. Are you from around here? I've never seen you, and it'd be hard to miss a face like that." "Oh, would it, Mark? My, what a charmer you are." Chandler took a sip of his stout. "So what's your name, darling?" "Molly." "I should have guessed. You look like a Molly." "Do I now?" "You do. Why, I once had a bird named Molly, and she was the prettiest thing I'd ever seen. Drop-dead gorgeous she was. And you could be her sister." Chandler started to laugh, but caught himself. "Ah, see there? I made you smile." "Christ. She's a pretty little thing, isn't she, Clive?" The bartender grunted, nodding. "See, old Clive thinks so, too. What do you think, Molly?" "I think you could be a model, strutting up and down the catwalk and pouting at the people out of magazines. That's what I do, I'm a talent scout for a modeling agency." "Is that so?" "It is. Have you ever given it any thought? Modeling?" "I don't suppose I have." "Well, you should. Take advantage of that face, those nice cheekbones, and your wee nose. I love your eyes, too." "Ah, I bet you say that to all the girls, don't you, Mark?" "Only the pretty ones." Chandler raised his pint to his lips and drained it in one go that made Mark and Clive's eyebrows jump. Watching them in the mirror through slitted eyes, he saw them exchange glances like, "Yep, we have a winner." "Mm-hmm. This is that Mark, then." He put the empty pipe down hard and said, "Let's go." Mark took Chandler a few blocks away to a tall gray building, talking the whole way, but it sounded like any one of the grown-ups talking in a Charlie Brown cartoon. Chandler was glad he was tipsy because it gave him the nerve to keep going, but he wished he hadn't drunk quite so much, just because. He kept a line from Dickens running in his head like a mantra. It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known. They arrived at the door, and Mark held it open for him. Such a gentleman. The floor wobbled a little beneath Chandler's feet as they walked, and he had to fight to keep his composure. They went to the lobby, Mark waving at somebody who did not wave back, and took the lift up to the 3rd floor, Mark still talking nonstop and Chandler not listening. The doors opened, and they entered an office with several people sitting around chatting. There were posters of fashion magazine covers on the walls and a coffee table with Cosmo and Vogue and several others next to a white vinyl couch. The people in the office looked up and greeted them with the kind of false enthusiasm that Chandler felt was usually exhibited by cult recruiters and politicians. "Oh, wow, where'd you find this one?" and words to that effect. Chandler was welcomed in and made to feel right at home. He sat where they told him to sit and accepted all of their kind words about his hair, his cheekbones, his wee nose. He smiled when he felt it was appropriate to smile, and nodded when he felt they wanted him to nod. And then when they brought him a few forms on a clipboard and a pen, he filled them in with a pack of lies he had planned out earlier. Then they offered him a drink, to loosen up. "What's your poison?" "Oh, whatever's fine," he said, squirming in his seat. Mark brought him a glass and a decanter and poured him a wee measure of something amber. But then, when he held it out for Chandler to take, Chandler, the beautiful redhead, said, "You drink it." Silence. The people froze, all 6 of them. "You have a drink first." Mark frowned, looked at the others, then laughed. "No, I'm grand, thanks. Here, have it." They were looking at each other wide-eyed, thinking, "Who the hell is this chick?" And when they looked back at her there on the couch, they caught their breath, because that was a gun she had in her fist. A small black gun with a long black silencer like James Bond carries, and she was holding it close to her lap like someone who knows what she's doing, instead of extended at arm's length, where shots can go wild or you can take it away from her in a mad rush. No, she held it close, and calmly. "Drink up, Mark," she said in a man's voice. Somehow, their eyes managed to go even wider, and Mark took a step back, and when Chandler realized he was deciding to throw the drink in his face and make a mad grab for his gun, he pulled the trigger, thinking, "Thank God I'm tipsy." Mark doubled over and crumpled to the floor, clutching at his belly and dropping the low-ball glass onto the carpet. The others screamed, but Chandler was up off the couch and two-handing the gun in that Weaver stance he'd seen on TV. "On the floor, all of you!"